Well. Welcome into Inside the Arc. I didn't expect to be having this podcast today with Brandon Simberg, Alec Bussey, of course. Welcome into Inside the Arc. Illinois loses to Marquette in their third game of the year, 67-66. And I don't really think there's a better word to describe Illinois' performance than atrocious, maybe ugly. Any word that connotates a bad feeling, a bad performance, that fits what Illinois did against Marquette in this loss, third game of the year. Sim, you texted me last night. Obviously, we were texting during the game. Each of us stayed in Champaign for the game and said that you have a lot of thoughts. So I will give you the floor to just give those thoughts.
Damn, I can't even get a how are you? We're just jumping straight into it. But yeah, that was an eye-opening game. I hadn't seen Marquette play before last night, but kind of looking at the results and the 8-point spread, I thought Illinois would be able to handle them easily, and that was not the case. I mean, I think the first thing that jumps off when you just look at the raw box score is 26 turnovers. I don't know when the last time Illinois had 26 turnovers was, but they were too sloppy with the ball. And Marquette comes out in a vintage Shaka Smart 1-2-2 havoc press, which he honestly didn't use a lot of at Texas because they didn't really need to, but that's what made him famous at VCU. And I didn't watch Marquette's first two games, so I don't know if Illinois was expecting this look, but it didn't look like they were expecting it. And I think they had 5 turnovers by the under 16 timeout, and that theme just carried throughout the game. So the sloppiness with the ball. We're going to dive into Andre Curbelo later, and he had 7 turnovers, and it felt like he had more. But it wasn't just him. Coleman Hawkins had 5, and I feel like he didn't get the ball that much. So how does he get 5 turnovers? Omar Payne with 3, Jake Grandison with 2, Trent Frazier with 3, DeMonte Williams with 3. Marquette's defense, athletes, and length. I didn't think they were very skilled, but they have the reigning Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in Daryl Morcell, who we know is an elite guard defender. They had
an Illinois killer. That needs to be thrown in there. Every time we say his name, Illinois killer.
5-1 against Illinois in his 5-year career, won the last 4 matchups. They had Kerr Kuoth, who only played 23 minutes and still registered 5 blocks. He was a presence at the rim, but I just don't think Illinois was mentally ready for Marquette's athletes, size, and press. And I think maybe some of that has to fall on coaching because you got to get them ready for that, even though you can't replicate that in practice, but you got to get them prepared. But that falls on Illinois too for just being careless.
Yeah, that was bad. That was hard to watch. And Illinois was, in my opinion, honestly, lucky to be in the game. Marquette didn't really capitalize very well off of Illinois' turnovers. I don't have the full box score in front of me because I didn't have the stat broad last night, but I don't think they capitalized very well off the turnovers. I guess they had 28 points off Illinois' 26 turnovers. That's awful. You should be upwards of 40 probably in that situation. There were 18 of 31 from the free throw line. And honestly, it almost cost them the game at the end because of how bad they were at the free throw line. I mean, Illinois was literally giving them every opportunity in the world to take that game away at the free throw line. And they just kept missing free throws in the last 4 minutes, and especially within the last 2 minutes as well. But yeah, Daryl Morcell killed Illinois, and they moved him around a couple different times. He started on Andre Curbelo. He moved over to Trent Frazier later in the game and kind of turned Trent Frazier's water off in terms of his scoring ability. And honestly, to me, Trent was the only bright spot for Illinois last night. I mean, he has 23 points. He's 7 of 15 from the field, 6 of 10 from 3, 1 off of a career high for 3-pointers in a game. Heck, even Trent had 5 rebounds last night, Sim. And that's a really good Trent Frazier game. And I know he had 3 turnovers to just 2 assists, but that's the only bright spot of that game. They didn't defend very well. Trent did a good job defending. I guess I'll give him some credit. He did a good job against Tyler Kolek, who finished with 12 points on 5 of 11 shooting. So Trent did a fine job defensively. But honestly, across the board, no one else was a net positive. I mean, Grandison was fine. DeMonte was fine. But I don't think anyone else was overall a positive last night outside of Trent Frazier.
I'll give DeMonte Williams a shout out because I think he did a lot of things really well.
He had a lot of boards. His offensive boards were
11 rebounds, keeping possessions alive, throwing the ball off a defender's foot at the end of the game. But
those are plays. He made those plays and you're thinking those are swing plays that are going to lead to Illinois winning the game. And they didn't, because they followed them up with stupid turnovers or bad shots.
Yeah, that's a play like DeMonte throws the ball off of somebody's leg. They get a baseline under bounce, baseline out of bounds, up one, get a good look for Trent Frazier, like shot didn't fall. Like it just wasn't their night in that regard. So I do want to give DeMonte a shout out though. I thought he played well enough. So I think, yeah, the first thing is the 26 turnovers, that stands out. And the second thing is 2 points from the bench. That's all they got. And we talk about Illinois this year, how they're going to be much deeper. And I know they're missing 2 rotational players in Austin Hutcherson and Kofi Coburn. So you're going to get deeper soon. And they really only played 8 guys. Luke Goody only saw 1 minute. But I'm a little concerned about some of the rotational pieces. Alfonso Plummer start to the year has not been great. He was 1 for 3 last night, 0 for 2 from 3 with 2 turnovers in just 13 minutes. And I think when we talked about, the Plummer, like how can we use him? I think it's been a tough marriage so far, because in a game like last night, you can't take, as bad as Curbelo was, you can't take him off the floor because you need him.
You need a point guard.
You need him to create offense. You need him to run the offense. When he sat and Trent was running the point, they can't get inside the paint. So you need to keep Curbelo on the floor. Then Trent Frazier has an awesome night. You need to keep Trent Frazier on the floor. But you can't play the 3 of them together, especially when Marquette is 6'5" and 6'7" at the 2 and the 3 spot. So that was kind of one of the concerns that we had coming in, and it's reared its head last night. But even when Plummer is in, I think they're having a tough time utilizing him and getting him using his strengths. At Utah, he was kind of a focal point of the offense. They had him coming off a lot of actions. Here, they're just kind of putting him in the corner, and I want to see them use him more because they need some instant offense, especially off the bench. And I think it's kind of, he's just not meshing well right now. And I've been a little disappointed in him. He was 0 for 2 from 3, but I also think he's having a tough time adjusting to this new role.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought him up. And I feel like Illinois just isn't using him properly. And maybe this isn't a very good comp, but I felt like they didn't always use Adam Miller properly last year either. In terms of getting Adam Miller involved in different actions. I know their games are a lot different, but let's be honest, they're both volume scorers offensively. Like Plummer's probably a lot more efficient when it comes to his shooting numbers than Adam Miller's probably ever going to be, I think. But they're not even bringing Plummer off ball screens for catch and shoot opportunities. And maybe those things change when Kofi gets back in the rotation, because I think that in itself encompasses so much of the problems that they had on Monday night. Was they just didn't have a guy that they could go to for 15 to 20 times a night and get 13 to 16 buckets, right? And Kofi is such a focal point of the offense when he's in there because he takes up so much space and it's so easy for him to get a bucket. And it's easy for him to set a screen on the block or at the elbow at the high post and have Plummer come off of it and catch a 3 or catch a pass from Curbelo or Frazier for a 3. And maybe that's something that we see, but they didn't do that for Adam Miller last year. And I know it was a totally different team. You had Io kind of running things and whatever, but why should I have a lot of confidence that Brad Underwood is going to put Alfonso Plummer in those situations? I guess is my question.
I don't know the answer because, and Brad even said in the offseason, he's never coached a shooter like Plummer. So yeah,
that's a really good point, actually.
So, and I don't think that if you go back to his Oklahoma State days, he had Phil Forte, who was one of the best shooters I remember growing up. And at some point I might go back and watch some Phil Forte film to see how they used him. And maybe Brad needs to do that too, because they're just not using Plummer to the best of his abilities right now. And I think it's disappointing. And then, DeMonte didn't score off the bench. We knew
he was going to get going offensively.
We knew he was going to regress as a shooter. He wasn't going to make 1 out of every 2 threes for the rest of his life, but he's 1 for 5 on the year. Defenses now know too that he can make open shots. So I think they're kind of running him off the line, and his in-between game maybe isn't as good. And then, another transfer who we talked about having a big role. And I think me and you actually kind of expressed our concerns early on, even in the offseason where the hype's getting a little out of control, is Omar Payne. And I don't think he wasn't necessarily bad last night, but he got outplayed. He was 3 for 3 from the field. he had one block, but I felt like he had a lot of rim contests. Like I thought he was
Yeah.
actually pretty good defensively, but he can only play 21 minutes because he got in foul trouble. Like, he has to stop with the silly fouls. He had one late in the game, but he's clearly not the rim protector, the lob threat that Kofi is. And I think his most glaring issue, and especially in a high pressure game like last night, was his hands. He dropped a couple passes that could have led to dunks and could have led to points. Like, he didn't miss a shot, but he missed points by dropping passes. So Omar, I thought, was good defensively when he wasn't fouling, but offense in the hands just quite isn't there. And I think he'll be much better suited in a backup role.
I'll say what I said to you last night. What's he do other than dunk and block shots? Like, he hasn't shown much other than that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a problem. That's a problem. He has no back to the basket game at all. And if you watch the Big Ten at all, you aren't a big in the Big Ten that it's successful if you don't have a back to the basket game. He doesn't have it. And that's something that needs to be developed very quickly if he's going to be the backup, because we saw last night, and it was a great story in the first two games, that Benjamin Boston-Verdonk played great. And I was super happy to see that. He did that. He did it with his family in the stands against Arkansas State. That was the first time they got an opportunity to see him play in an Illinois uniform. So awesome story, right? He played 9 minutes last night, and I don't think he played nearly at all in the second half. I mean, maybe a couple spot minutes, but 0 of 4 from the field, had 4 rebounds. Like, that's Benjamin Boston-Verdonk. And I hate saying that because I want kids to be successful and I want everyone to be able to achieve their dreams as a player, but he didn't move very well. He was really heavy. His shots weren't particularly good looks. They weren't particularly close when he let go of it. And he just wasn't very good. And honestly, he doesn't have the body of a 5. Like, weight wise, sure he does, but he's 6'8", 6'9". Like, he's not big enough to play the 5 in the Big Ten. They need Omar Payne to be better. And if he's not, you are putting a ton of weight on Kofi Cockburn to, one, be the second best big in the country. Sorry, Drew Timme, you're the best. And you're 37 points against Texas. And you're putting a ton of weight on him to not get in foul trouble. And that's a lot of weight on a kid that he needs someone to get him the ball to be successful, right? Like, he can't command the ball and run offense because he just isn't that type of player.
Yeah, I think, everyone wants to talk about, is this year's team better than last year's team? And like, oh, they're similar, they only lost one guy. Last night was a night where they missed Ayo Dosunmu, obviously, but I think they missed Adam Miller too, because he could have been that secondary creator. Like last year it was kind of Ayo as the main creator and Curbelo was the second guy. The plan for this year was Andre Curbelo as the first creator and Adam Miller as the second creator, which is a role I think he would have been really good in, as opposed to kind of his corner shooter role last year. And they, Alfonso Plummer in the sit in the corner and shoot role is an upgrade over Adam Miller, but he's not a creator, and he's
not as good of a defender either.
He's not as good of a defender. You could have thrown out Miller, Curbelo, and Frazier last night, I think, and gotten away with it. But they really miss that second creator. And then we were texting about this last night. They missed Georgie Bashanashvili. He had his lows last year. He had his games where he just clearly didn't bring it. But he also could swing games and win games with just a few post buckets and his energy. And that is just not what Omar brings at all. Like, I don't want to make this declarative statement for the rest of the season, but after 3 games and after last night, in a vacuum, I'd rather have Georgie than Omar Payne, because Georgie could have gotten you a couple post hooks, could have had some finishes around the rim, would have competed on D. He fouled too, but it wasn't to the level that Omar fouled. I don't think Brad wanted to play Benjamin Boston-Verdonk as much as he did. I think he would have preferred to play Coleman at the backup 5.
Well, and that's what he did in the second half.
Right, but he had to play him in the first half because, you have Omar in foul trouble, Coleman has 1 foul, and you don't want to pick up a second or just play him 20 minutes. Like, Brad kind of had no choice. And I do think the Benjamin thing will end now that Kofi's back and you have 2.5 centers in the rotation. But last night was a night where obviously they missed Adam Miller, but they missed Georgie as well.
Yeah, they did. All right. Let's talk about it. Andre Curbelo, I think, just had his worst game as an Illinois player. And there was a stretch last year where he was really bad. Like he was like not able to be put on the floor for extended periods of time. So it was like a 5-6 game stretch last year. I have to go back and look. But he plays 26 minutes last night, goes 4 of 18 from the field. I think he was like 0 of 9 in the last like 5, 7, 10 minutes, something. I have to go look again. 0 of 3 from 3, including one terrible shot at the top of the key with a few, at least 7 or 8 seconds left on the shot clock. NBA 3, air balls it. 3 of 4 from the free throw line. I guess that's a positive. 8 rebounds. That's a positive, I guess. He has 3 assists to just 7 turnovers, which is just unacceptable. And I texted you this last night. If he's going to be good this year, if he's going to be an all Big Ten player, it's going to come down to how consistent of a player he is. And as a freshman, it was okay for him to make some of the maddening, silly mistakes that he did on a fairly consistent basis, right? Like, it's a freshman, seeing things, games faster, blah, 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 what have you. Those can't happen anymore. Not when you are the guy who the offense is running through. You cannot turn the ball over 5, 7, 8 times a game if the offense is running through you. You just can't. And he's forcing things. He's doing things that are just not within his game. And Illinois needs to find a way to reel him back in and get him on a straight and narrow path, right? Because Tim Anderson has talked a bunch about the importance of him being able to hit singles and him being able to just make the routine, consistent play. He didn't do that last night at all. And that's really concerning.
Yeah, that might have been one of the worst basketball games he's ever played, if we're being honest. Like, I'm sure he's dominated at every level. And you're right. Coming into this year, we expect Curbelo to, I think expectations were a little unfair and too high for a guy that played like 21 minutes a game last year. Like, all of a sudden we're saying he's going to win the koozie. He's going to be almost Io 2.0. And it's just a reminder of how good Io is and was for Illinois. And let's also not forget, Io as a sophomore wasn't Io as a junior. Like, he had another leap to take. Yeah. But I don't want to harp on the past anymore. I've done that a lot. It's just, when you look at Curbelo last night, I think that Marquette's athletes in length bothered him. They threw Daryl Morcell on him, who's got 4 or 5 inches on him and is just as fast and has elite hands. And, a lot of those like ball screen splits, and he kind of dribbles through 3 guys. Marquette had the length to just knock it away. And they cut off the passing lanes because Curbelo has not taken the leap as a shooter. And the turnovers.
It's nice to see that he has a willingness to shoot it, though, if that makes sense. But they shouldn't be bad shots. Like the 3 at the top of the key, terrible shot. The baseline runner fade away, terrible shot.
So I'll actually defend the 3 at the top of the key because if you guys want to watch every Illinois possession in the last 5.5 minutes, if you want to put yourself through that torture and hear my thoughts, there's a thread on my Twitter page. But in that possession, though, like, they kind of tried to run a set, and Frazier gets the ball, comes off a handoff, doesn't want it, swings it to Curbelo. Curbelo swings it to Hawkins in the corner, and Hawkins hot potatoed it right back to Curbelo. Like, they kind of put him in spots where they were like, okay, we need you to make a play. And he had just gotten 2 shots blocked to the rim. So maybe he was like, I don't want to go back there. But you can't play with that fear. But I think if he can just make a few more shots, defenses will stop going under him and they will stop cutting off the passing lanes. Like, the Arkansas State coach said it. When he drives, he's looking to pass, turn him into a scorer. And against Arkansas State, who didn't have elite rim protection or elite anything, yeah, he can score. But, now we're seeing what happens when he's forced to be the main guy for 30 plus minutes a night, and they need him to replace 21 points from Io. He's not that level of a scorer right now. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't want to act like this is the end for Andre Curbelo, because it's totally not, right? Like, this has kind of been his career so far for Illinois. It's been a roller coaster. It's had its highs and it's had its lows, right? And it's about just finding a level of consistency. And I kind of want to talk about winning time, and this kind of continues the Andre Curbelo conversation, I guess, a little bit, Sim, right? It's after the game, I texted you, I texted other people. I was like, welcome to winning time without Io. And when you don't have a guy who's a go-getter in terms of getting shots and making shots, winning becomes a lot more difficult in the last 5 minutes of a game. And there are advantages to having a guy like Andre Curbelo in that role, because he's someone who can make a play, make the right pass, get an open shot. And if you have an open shot, you're never going to complain about it, even if it rims out or whatever. But the downside to that is that teams know that he is going to be trying to make a play. So they're going to defend him differently. And that's exactly what Marquette did. And on the last possession specifically, Marcelo switched over to him because they know he's going to be the one trying to make the play. So he kind of backs down into the lane. He's got his back to the basket, and Marcel kind of pokes. He's got help defense coming. That's a great set. That's a great defensive set by Shaka Smart to bring the help defense and to switch Marcel over to him. And teams are going to start doing that now. They're going to switch their best defender over to Curbelo in the last few minutes of the game. And a lot of times that's going to be someone that's bigger than him. So he's going to have to learn how to play with a size disadvantage in those minutes. And he's going to have to find a way to do it against guys who are really, really good defenders. And that's really difficult. And maybe it gets easier when Kofi Coburn's there and Kofi's able to run a pick and roll with it. But like, winning time was bad last night. He looked like he forced a lot of things. And when he didn't force things, it looked like he was lost and didn't know exactly what he was trying to do. And Coleman Hawkins said after the game, we haven't worked a ton on late game situations, but that's no excuse. And I don't really think late game situations are that different now for Illinois than they are for the first 35 minutes of the game, because you have a point guard that's just trying to make plays for other people. And last year, winning time was different because you had Io, who was going to go get you a bucket. You don't have that guy anymore. Your late game situation only changes that much.
Yeah, so I'll go back to that last play. Marquette's up 1, 17 seconds left. They miss a free throw, and Illinois has a timeout. But in general, I'm actually in favor of not calling a timeout, not letting the defense talk it over, and kind of running.
Brad said too.
Like I'm actually usually in favor of that. Now they hadn't scored in over 5 minutes, so maybe in that scenario, again, this is all hindsight bias because if they score, we're not having this discussion. But you haven't scored in 5 minutes, I would maybe call a timeout. And I'm watching the last play on my Twitter feed right now. Curbelo gets the rebound, kind of walks it up. They space the 4 shooters out: Frazier, Williams, Grandison, and they have Hawkins come up and set a screen, but he fakes it. Like Hawkins goes to set a screen and he pops out. And so the defense doesn't switch. That action did nothing. Like they guarded it perfectly, but that's not a great action. Like, why can't you actually do a ball screen, or why wasn't there a real set besides a fake screen? So then Curbelo is forced into a one-on-one scenario. And like you said, Marquette guarded it well. And it resulted in a turnover. And then going back to the late game scenarios, I actually thought they ran some decent stuff down the stretch to get some good looks, but like you have Trent Frazier miss a 2 on a baseline out of bounds open shot. You have broken play, Frazier just missed an open 3. And then you have a play where Jake Grandison's open on the wing and Curbelo tried to overhead pass it. And by the time the ball got there, the defense caught up, which is on Curbelo for throwing an overhead pass in a 1-point game with a minute left. So I actually don't think the late game execution was the late game coaching was terrible. They just didn't really execute well. But no, like you said, it's Io makes the plays down the stretch there. And when you have Kofi back, he's obviously going to help. He's obviously going to take up a lot of space, but he's never been a guy you just throw the ball to in the post and say, okay, go get us a bucket. He's not Drew Timme. He will help clear things up, but at the end of the game, it still needs to be Curbelo who has the ball in his hands. And I think this is a learning experience for him, but you can't not be concerned.
Yeah. And going back to that last play again, and he's got Coleman Hawkins wide open at the top of the three. And I don't think Coleman's necessarily the guy you want taking an open three at that point. I mean, he was 1 of 4 from 3 last night, and he's a capable shooter, but like I don't think he's the one who you want necessarily taking an open 3 with the game on the line. But that's better than backing into 2 defenders, right? So, all right, Sim, I think we should kind of now shift our focus to what do they do this week?
I have one more.
Yeah, go for it.
In-game question. This might become a weekly segment at this point, but where were you with Coleman Hawkins' performance last night?
I don't know. Like, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I put you on the spot.
I mean, I answer that saying I don't know because I felt like there was times where he was good, and then there was times I felt like he didn't really do anything, right? And I felt like a couple of his buckets came in situations where they were just easy dunks that were right there at the rim that were easy buckets, right? Like I did player grades last night. I gave him a C+. He was sloppy in the first half. He had 4 turnovers. He finished with 5. His first 3 misses from 3 were all way off. Defensively, I didn't think he was great. I thought Justin Lewis kind of had his way with him. I mean, Lewis finished with 17 points on 50% shooting. And I know Lewis is bigger and stronger than he is. Not bigger, he's stronger than he is. But I don't know. There's going to be growing pains with him. Like this was his first real test, right? Against a high major opponent on the road, opposing fans there for the first time. I didn't think he was terrible. I gave him a C+. If they win, he probably gets a B- or a B, right? Like, I don't know. That's kind of how it goes. But I thought he was fine. I don't know. What do you think? You're the Coleman Hawkins stan of the podcast. You kind of got me on it, but
I was a little like me and everyone else. Like I think everyone hopped on the bandwagon after he dominated 2 smaller, inferior teams. Like last night was definitely a wake-up call. Marquette's athletes and size, like they did to Curbelo, bothered him. Like he wasn't powering through guys as much. A lot of the dribbling and passing stuff he tried to do isn't there when guys on the defense are reacting quicker. So I think he's a guy that can go back and watch his own film and see some of the mistakes he made. But like you said, I think a lot of those dunks come from the hustle plays and just like he still played with such a high motor.
He looked tired at the end.
Yeah. When was the last time he played 32 minutes in a game? In a college basketball game that's up and down, like, yeah. But I think a lot of the effort plays he made, are important. And like I still would start him at the 4 every game going forward.
I would too.
He just still can bring some things that not everyone else has. You'd like to see him shoot better than 1 for 4 from 3.
He needs to be a better free throw shooter too.
Yeah, he was 0 for 1. The 1 point could have helped.
I think he's like 11 of 18 now in the year.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that was a good wake-up call because when they play, so we're transitioning into next week, if they get to Arkansas is a similar kind of team. They're quick, they're fast. They got wings with size. So, I think this will be a good learning piece going up into that game.
Okay, Sam, what changes this week? Is everything clean slate now? You got Kofi back. You feel like things are back to normal. Like what does this week of practice look like? How does your preparation for Kansas City and Cincinnati kind of go now? Right? Like to me now it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that, so the team does have today off, which I think that's totally acceptable. Late travel last night, you don't play for 7 days, just kind of give them a day to rest. And then you attack it. And Brad is going to be on them starting Wednesday. I don't want to say it's a clean slate. Like you got to learn from this. You have to go back and watch the game and be like, okay, what did they do? How can we prevent this? But you can't dwell on it. And I think with a week off, they won't. And I think, now at the rotation, I don't know how much Benjamin Bossman's Verdonk will see. Probably not much. I think Omar Payne, if Kofi's back and ready to play 30 minutes, he's probably only seeing 10 minutes. Coleman's going to see less minutes now with Kofi being able to play some 5. And I think that their offense, they didn't really change their offense with Omar Payne instead of Kofi because they're a similar mold of big. So you don't need to change too much, but you you need to work on not turning the ball over, getting ready to play against press and pressure, because I think Arkansas will bring that.
Okay, so I got a fun question for you. So we think that Coleman is going to stay at the starting four. I have no reason to think that that's going to change. At the end of the year, actually, let's do it this way. At the end of non-conference play, when the calendar flips to January, who is averaging more minutes a game, Jacob Grandison or DeMonte Williams?
It's a good question.
Yeah, because so the reason I asked that question is, one, Kofi's going to be playing the 5. Coleman is the only 4 that this team has, unless they want to play small, which with Kofi at the 5 you can do. But let's assume they don't go small a lot. Who gets more minutes, Jacob Grandison or DeMonte Williams at the 3? Because Coleman's going to be the starting 4. And Grandison's going to start, by the way.
Yeah, Grandison will start. They like bringing DeMonte off the bench. But watching the last few games, like on film and really going back and watching everything, I think it will be DeMonte, assuming he figures out how to shoot again, because Grandison has not been great defensively. He definitely provides a boost offensively, but when you get Kofi back, you're kind of picking up some of that offensive slack. I think if Coleman can be a more consistent shooter too, again, there's less need for offense. And without DeMonte out there, there's just not that guy that makes those winning hustle plays. And I think that is going to be at least down the stretch. That's the guy you want on the court. So I think it's going to be super close. I think one game you might see Jake if he's hitting shots. I think one game you might see DeMonte if he's doing what he does. But I'll lean DeMonte, at least in closing time.
DeMonte played 31 minutes last night and Jake played 30. That's where my question came from.
Yeah.
Because I think essentially they do the same thing for the team, right? Like they make the energy plays, they get the offensive rebounds, they hit a big shot here or there. And the Jacob Grandison we saw in the first 2 games, I don't think is Jacob Grandison we're going to see much of this year. A guy that's averaging 17.5 points a game through those first 2 games. He scored 10 points last night on 4 of 9 shooting, 2 of 4 from the field. I kind of think that's the Jacob Grandison we kind of see for most of the year. But yeah, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, I think like you said, you ideally from that spot, you want hustle plays and glue guy plays. And DeMonte is always better at that. Like Jake can do it. He's a little bit taller, but you're going to get from DeMonte with Grandison. It's not always there.
Yeah. All right, Sam. Didn't expect to do this early.
Well, I hate to do this early, but like this is what us talking head media people do. Just looking at overall season expectations after last night, like has your opinion of this team changed or your opinion of Andre Curbelo?
I don't know. And I keep answering your questions that way.
I'm putting you on the spot for those listening. Like we prep this a little bit, go over things we want to talk about, but I just kind of fire some questions that come to my mind. So Alec was put on the spot here.
Of the team, I don't know, because I don't know how much stock to put into this because they didn't have Kofi, who is their best player, who they run everything through offensively and defensively. They win this game if Kofi is playing. I promise you that. Of Curbelo, my thing coming into the year was he needs to be consistent. And if he wasn't going to be consistent, then I was going to have concerns. And we've now seen him in the IUP scrimmage, which he did have a concussion in for most of the game. So that deserves to be said. But he had 10 turnovers in that game. He had 7 turnovers against Marquette. That's concerning to me because you knew he was going to have a much higher usage rate, which you knew was going to contribute to a higher assist rate and likely a increased turnover percentage compared to last year. But you didn't want it to be like this bad, this early. So I don't know. And I think I said this to you last night. I didn't think this year's team was good enough to go to the Final Four. I thought last year's team was good enough to go to the Final Four. I thought last year's team was good enough to go to the Final Four when the season started. I don't think this year's team is. I don't know if you feel the same way. I don't know if you don't feel the same way. I feel like this is a second weekend team. I've always kind of felt like that. Now, maybe if everything clicks and everything works really well, maybe they are going to have to go to the Final Four.
Yeah, on the season outlook, I don't think this doesn't change things entirely for me. Like, I was concerned about who's kind of your second playmaker because you don't have Io or Adam Miller anymore, and that reared its head. And yeah, I actually think at the beginning of the season, I was like, well, let's see how it looks. If Curbelo is the best guard, like for them to be a Final Four team, you were assuming Curbelo was a first team All-American like Jeff Goodman thought. And I just don't think he has that in him. And I think he'll be much better in Big Ten play because Marquette, for as bad as they were, had athletes and size that like Wisconsin doesn't, Iowa doesn't, Ohio State doesn't. Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray can't guard 5 players. He sometimes does. But he can't guard 5 players. I think Curbelo will find his rhythm in Big Ten, but for him to reach that pedestal we all wanted him to get to, you assumed he was you assumed he was going to shoot it. And like you said, Illinois, like his usage rate was crazy last night. It was a 41% usage rate. To put into context, like Io DeSumo's last year was 29 for the entire season. So it's 41%. Like they're putting a lot on him, but he's just not the shooter you want him to be a first team All Big Ten guy or first team All-American. I think he could be, it's still think he could be a second team All Big Ten guy. I still think Illinois is the 3rd best team in the Big Ten. I still think they'll get a good seed.
Considering what Ohio State has shown us, yes. Although they did wax Bowling Green last night.
Ohio State and Michigan State. We'll do a podcast hopefully soon with Isaac where we can talk about the Big Ten teams. But yeah, I don't know if the ceiling is there because I think to go on some crazy run, you need a crazy Curbelo run. And he's going to have games where he just wins you the game and he's close to a triple-double and maybe he's up to 20 points. But they're just, like we saw last night, they're one bad Curbelo game away from losing. And Kofi will stabilize things. But I talked about on the first episode, Curbelo's a roller coaster. And Illinois is going to ride the highs and lows, and they don't really have a choice.
No, you said it well. You said it really well. And you know what's going to happen, right? Because this is just what happens. You know they're going to go to Kansas City. They're going to beat Cincinnati by about 25. They'll play Arkansas and beat them by 15. And then we'll be doing a whole nother podcast about, oh, wow, maybe this team is good enough to win the national championship because that's just what happens, right?
If they beat Arkansas, you could throw this loss out, honestly. If they beat Arkansas, I think you could throw this loss out because I've seen Arkansas a few times. That's a good team. That's a similar type of challenge. If they beat Arkansas, I will be very impressed.
Okay, I got one more quick one before we get out of here. Does the NCAA tournament committee give Illinois some slack for this loss because Kofi wasn't playing?
Yeah, I don't think it'll count as like a normal, like whatever quad loss this was. I don't know if it's quad 1 because Marquette. Well, I think
it's not out yet.
Okay, and that depends on what Marquette does down the line. And yeah, I think Mark, if you're Illinois fans, you kind of want Marquette to go on a run. Like they're projected to finish 9th in a weak Big East, which is not a good sign. So if Marquette's like, okay, Illinois plays well, I think this loss can be shrugged off. Like you dink them for it, but it can be shrugged off. But like if Marquette is bad, then I think they'll have to get docked a little bit. And I think Marquette is bad. I watched that game. I didn't walk away saying, oh, Marquette's good. I watched that game and was like, that's not a very good team. So we'll see. It depends on how Marquette does. Illinois fans, you can tune into FS1 on your Tuesdays and hope Marquette can beat Butler and teams of that nature. But yeah, I think that they won't get docked too much. Where are you at?
Well, it's the NCAA, so they'll probably find a way to dock Illinois a bunch for it. Be like, oh, you didn't have the player we suspended for 3 games. Yeah, 6th seed. Like, Illinois could win the Big Ten. Oh, you lost Marquette, 6th seed. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, please. Illinois is in the Big Ten, so they'll get.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of, obviously, it's really dependent on how good Marquette is this year. It depends on how good Illinois ends up being this year, if they get docked for it or not. I think it'll probably end up being a quad 2 loss, which isn't the end of the world, right? I'd have to go back and look at how those brackets are made up and where the cutoff is for it. But I think it's like top 75 road loss is maybe a quad 2 loss. I'd have to go look at it again. But if it's a quad 2 road loss, is it the end of the world? No, it's not. It's a bad loss. It's probably going to be on the bad losses thing, or the diagram that they put up: quality wins, bad losses, strength of schedule, BPI, whatever it is, right? It'll probably be under the bad losses category. And Illinois had those last year and they were still a 1 seed. So it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, you've had a busy few weeks, busy morning. What can the people expect from you on Twitter this week, and where can they find your work and all that?
Well, I'll say waking up to an email from Illinois Athletic Communications that Brett Bielema tested positive for COVID. That'll get your blood flowing pretty well, Sim. I don't know if you've ever experienced such breaking news like that. So that got my blood.
Did. My large Italian Duke son, Paolo Banchero, was.
Did I send you that? Did I break that news to you?
I don't know. I don't know, because I think your Bielema text was last, and I just woke up, and the first thing I did was hop on Twitter, and it was the first thing that popped up. So it might have been Twitter. You might have sent it to me.
I woke up and I screamed, "Oh shit!" When I saw it, I was like, "Oh my God, no, that's so bad." And then the Bielema thing comes like 3 seconds later. I'm like, "Oh shit, I gotta work."
But yeah, so what can the people expect from you in the next week or so? Because you've got a big ahead.
We've got 2 Illinois football games left. They travel to Iowa this week. We'll see how media coverage works that week. This week, they're kind of shuffling it around with the news this morning in regards to COVID. I'll have a 5 film favorites thing from this Marquette game. I don't really know what I'm going to find as a favorite, but those are really something that I've had a lot of fun doing this year as far as writing. It's been a lot of fun to kind of go through those, and your help with them has been huge and your critiques have been great. So I appreciate that. I'll have a couple basketball stories this week. I'll probably try and get one on the transfers at some point. And then I think it's signing week still until I think Wednesday. There could be some news on that front for Illinois around Ty Rodgers. I'm not saying that he is signing. I'm not saying he's committing. Do not put this on me, Illinois fans, if he doesn't sign or commit or if he goes elsewhere. But yeah, that's a potential thing that could happen as well. And that'll obviously be a huge commitment if it were to happen. So yeah, another busy weekend, the life of Alec Bussey.
Yeah, I'll be sitting here clipping random college basketball games, but I have been doing some Illinois film breakdowns. I did the full Arkansas State game on my Twitter at Brandon Simberg, and then I watched every offensive possession of the last 5 minutes of the Marquette game. So if you want to stomach that and hear some of my thoughts, feel free to check that out.
All right, Sim, let's get out of here. I'll be in Kansas City next week. If you want to tag along, you're welcome to.
Cowboys do play the Chiefs on Sunday, but I don't think I'll be making the trip.
All right. Thanks for listening to Inside the Arc, everyone. We appreciate you. We'll have another episode potentially this week, maybe later in the week as well. So thanks for listening, everyone. Take care of everyone.